Welcome to Finance at the Jobsite, the podcast where construction finance meets the field. I'm your host, Rishi Srivastava, founder of Being Human. In each episode, I sit down with construction CFOs, controllers, owners, project managers, IT leaders, ERP consultants, and industry experts to uncover how they connect the back office with the field, choose and implement technology, manage cash flow, and drive profitable projects. Whether you are running the numbers, leading the team, or designing the systems that keep projects moving, this is your place to learn what's working, what's broken, and what's next in construction finance. Today, our guest is Jennifer Murphy. Jennifer, welcome.
Thank you.
First section here is on your role, background, and ESOP context. Can you share your journey to becoming CFO at Pleune Service Company and CFMA's national chair?
Sure, I'd love to. Thanks for asking. I started my career after getting my accounting degree in very large manufacturing companies. That was my experience. I'd worked for ISO 9000, big manufacturing companies. Situation came up, though, where I either had to move to another state or change jobs. And I left that and I ended up my job. I was a controller at a general contractor. It was my first into construction, and I really didn't know what construction accounting was versus what I had been doing so heavily in cost and manufacturing accounting. And someone at the company I was at recommended CFMA, which is Construction Financial Management Association. And it's an organization that is geared around people in the financial industry of construction companies. And so I joined back in 2006 just to learn more about construction accounting because if I had learned it in college, I didn't remember any of it 15 years after college. That was where I joined and first heard of CFMA. I spent about 3 years at the general contractor I was at, and we ended up closing the doors. And from there, I went to Pleune Service Company, where I'm at now. I've been there almost 16 years. We are a commercial heating and cooling company. We work in the state of Michigan. We've been in business 52 years. And we are an ESOP, which means we're an employee-owned company. We became a partially employee-owned company in 1988, so 37 years ago. And we've been 100% employee-owned since 2002. So 23 years as a 100% employee-owned company. Leadership at our company, especially our president, from the minute I joined, really encouraged us to be involved in the industry. And so I was already a member of CFMA, but not what I would call an active member. I went to meetings, I attended some classes, and so I got much more involved in our local board, local committees, served as our chapter president in 2016-17. After I did that, I was asked to start doing some more at the CFMA national level. And so I served on some committees nationally for CFMA and then got asked to be part of our executive committee. So CFMA is a nonprofit, but we are what we call member-led. And so our board and executive committee are all made up of members of the organization, but we all actually work for companies in the construction industry. So I served on our executive committee for 3 years. And then was asked to be an officer. And so this year is my 3rd year in the officer track, and I'm the national chair. So I'm representing our 99 chapters and 11,000 members across the United States. And it's been a great honor. It's an amazing organization, and I have so many peers that I can bounce stuff off that experience the same things I do all over the country. And so it's been so rewarding, and I'm blessed that, my company encourages me and supports me being involved in it because it takes me away from the office quite often.
I listened to you in the CFMA annual presentation. It was so motivating. Thank you so much for
No, I
presenting
think
that kind of presentation. Good.
yes. I mean, and for anyone that, really my presentation, every one of us has to find what makes us rich, and it's different for each one of us. And so really, I think focusing on what are those coins that kind of, for me being Irish, fill your pot of gold and make you rich. And it can be
Mhm.
professional, it can be personal, it can be, community, faith, whatever it is, every one of us needs to find those things though and make sure we're doing the things that fill that pot for you.
Yeah, completely. What daily behaviors or decision-making approaches shift when everyone in the company is an owner under an ESOP structure?
So, when I joined Pleune, I had never even heard of an ESOP. I wasn't sure what it was. And now I'm actually one of our trustees, which means there's two of us that administer the plan. It's an ERISA retirement plan. It's a legal IRS plan for retirement. But the thing that's really when people buy in is that there's no owner that is taking your profits. So at the end of the year, whatever we make as a company, we retain earnings that we need to retain to manage the next year's purchases or ongoing operations. But we set a goal every year that's communicated to the employees at the start of the fiscal year. And once we've met that retained earnings we need to keep in, we pay everything back to our employees in profit sharing. So they realize that everything they do and everything they contribute every day comes back to them at the end of the year. I try to simplify it because a lot of people don't understand it. I say, imagine you bought a share of GM stock, and every time they announce their earnings, as long as they've beat their projections, their stock price goes up. And when they have really good years, they pay you a dividend check. And we try to speak that way about our company is every one of us is contributing to that pot. And when we beat those projections, our share price goes up, which means your retirement account that you're putting nothing in, the company's putting it all in, goes up. And then we cut a large profit sharing check to you. So you get cash in your hand that current year for all your hard work, but yet you're also seeing a retirement account grow for you.
What happens when you don't meet those projections? So let's say you do less than what you're expecting.
You could see your stock price go down. You're going to get shares of stock every single year. So, that's the other thing to remind is we can have a bad year, and it's more than just how our company performs. Your stock value in an ESOP is really what would someone be willing to pay for the company if they were to come in and buy it. And so we were having a couple of great years, but with inflation and what happened in interest rates, our stock price actually went down because now investors are expecting a higher rate of return because interest rates were up. So even though our business performed well and we were putting a lot of money in our pockets of our employees, we actually saw our stock price go down simply based on inflation and interest rates because that's how they value it is what would someone be willing from the outside to pay for you. So
Mhm.
there are factors outside of just how the company does that play into the financial, stock value. But the thing we really try to engage with our employees is you're always going to have, it's just like investing in the stock market. You're going to have a year or two here or there that goes down. But over the 30 some years, we've had less than 5 years, our stock price has dropped. So every single year you're getting shares and almost every year they go up. And your shares don't stay in at the price you got them. They're at whatever the value is. So if you're building up and every year that price is going up, those shares you've had for years are always valued at the new price. So it's a long haul strategy. But we have employees that have been with us 40 years, 45 years. I'm the second least senior with 16 years of our exec team. I mean, we've got two vice presidents with over 35 years, our president at 30. I mean, people stay because they see the value in a company that gives, we're giving back to the employees because you're the owners and you actually make an impact every day. All your hard work doesn't go to, somebody's yacht and country club memberships. It comes back to you.
Yeah. Yeah, but as an employee, this kind of structure definitely can be motivating. So what are the advantages and challenges of focusing exclusively on the Michigan market as a 30 to 35 million commercial, mechanical, and service contractor?
So I would tell you, coming from a general contractor that did work all over the United States, some of the nice part is I'm not every new job figuring out what the registration and licensing and tax requirements in every state we go into and having to file, personal property tax returns and withholding and buying insurances in all these states all over. And for us being employee owned, one thing that's really important to our employees is they want to go home most nights to their family. We have employees that have chosen to work for us because we aren't a traveling company. There's some that they like that. They want to be in hotels, they want to travel, they do. And we do have jobs occasionally. We've got one going right now that's about 2.5 hours from our office, and we don't want our guys driving that, after 10-hour days. That's just not safe. And so we put them up in hotels, but it's for a month or two. It's not a constant. And so some of the bonuses we actually retain a lot of employees because we are local and they know where they're going to be working and they know they're going to be home with their families at night. I would say some of the downsides are it's harder if say your backlog's dropping, you're not winning some work. it's harder to go find new work because your region that you can find work in is limited compared to just saying, "Hey, I'm going to start bidding all over the United States," or "I'm going to jump in another state." And hey, I know that state unfortunately just got hit with a natural disaster, and there's probably a lot of work there. So that can become a little harder when you do need work. And for our service side of the business, there's only so much service work, and there's a number of mechanical contractors in our area. And so we lose some preventative maintenance contracts and we gain some as customers switch, but there's just
Mhm.
not an overextended market that we are in. So that can sometimes be difficult for us.
Next section here is on WIP meetings
Mhm.
and project controls. How have your WIP meetings evolved over time? Cadence, attendees, agenda, and which changes most improved forecast accuracy?
So I would tell you when I started, we would have our WIP meetings. And first, when I started the company, we didn't have project managers. Our salespeople sold the jobs and project managed them. And
Mm,
so it was very hard to have an idea what was happening in our jobs, because what might have been a change order, they might be giving to the customer, so they'd give them future work, or they're not getting paperwork. And we eventually hired project managers and took that away from the sales team. And then initially, we spent a lot of time, our WIP meetings seemed to be operation meetings. The PMs would say, "This is what's going on in the job." And I'd have sales asking, "Well, why?" And then they were problem solving the jobs in our WIP meeting. And they took hours, and I still didn't get accurate projections. But I've worked hard with our construction vice president, and he was a former project manager. And so we spent a lot of time on the importance of the accuracy of the forecast. I've spent a lot of time educating our project managers on all the users of the WIP, that it's not just an accounting function. It's not just, "Oh, the accounting department needs this." I've, explained to them how our sureties use it to give us bonding capacity. I have to give it to our bank quarterly, that I have to meet every year with our underwriter from our bonding to go through jobs on the WIP and why did we lose or gain. I've started to involve them in our annual CPA review when the auditors go through the profit fade and look back and the gain and look back. I bring our project managers in to answer those questions so they understand why that WIP is so important to be accurate, because these are the questions that come up and what it drives outside of just accounting needing that report. So it took a long time, just the education and getting that. But now we hold our WIP meeting the first Friday of every month. Before we get into the WIP meeting, the project managers have the WIP report for 2 days. They put together what we call WIP notes by job by job. Every project manager puts notes on what's going on the project, what their projections are for hours, for materials, for labor dollars, for subcontracts, what change orders. We have the cost in the job, but we're waiting on the paperwork so we can adjust the contract. And so that's all given to me prior to the WIP meeting, which allows me, before I go into the WIP meeting, to take their notes and projections, look at what I see in the WIP, look at I see in open commitments, and then our WIP meeting becomes very much more of, if I see differences or I can ask questions. And I mean, we just had our WIP the last Friday, and or actually we had it Tuesday, I apologize, and we were through it in about 45 minutes in, going through 30 jobs, because they come in and then any action items that come out of it, those same WIP notes, our project assistant puts those right in Sage and we sends them out. And so they're bolded in red so everyone knows what their follow-ups are from that WIP meeting. And so it has definitely turned it into um, a very quick and efficient meeting. We have good discussion. We don't spend a lot of time on what's going on the job more than where the estimates are, but also if the PMs are running into issues, it gives us time to brainstorm as a team. Like, hey, I may be able to bring up, well, the contract says this, so you have the right to push back here. I tend to be more involved in the contracts or the risk side. And we also, besides the PMs, our project assistant is in those meetings, our construction biller who sets the jobs up and does the billings. The salespeople are invited. Our purchasing agent, who does all the purchasing for the job. So if we have questions on open POs or maybe material being returned, she's in there to answer the questions. The VP of construction is in there. So we have a whole team in there so that we're getting all the information that we need at that time in that meeting.
Yeah, that slow progression to, or maybe fast progression to this perfect fit.
Right.
Seems like has been a work for you. How do you turn WIP variances into concrete actions within the same week instead of waiting until the next cycle?
As I mentioned, as we go through that WIP, if we identify certain things that need to be done by someone and need to be followed up within usually a half hour of the meeting, the project assistant has those WIP notes out with the action items by job in bolded red, and we address that. And then we're an October 31st year end, and so we sit after our August WIP meeting as a team, and we look at all the jobs in the WIP to see which ones we might be able to close yet this year, what needs to happen on those jobs in order for them to close, and then we meet again after the September, and we just met again after our say, okay, what progress have we made on these? Are we going to get this done? And so it's just constant, communication and follow up, and really having someone that's taking those action items in notes and getting them out, I think is one of the most important parts of it, because you go through a meeting and it's easy to get tied up and forget about stuff and go on to the next thing. But having those notes come out immediately so everyone is aware of them, and then we follow up with each other on our assigned tasks.
Using any tool for note taking
Yeah,
during these meetings?
Yep, everything is put actually in Sage. So Sage 300 is what we use. And within a job overview, there's a note for every job. There's notes. And so that's where the project managers put their notes before the WIP meeting, and we just pull them out into Excel. And then the project assistant puts those action items right back into Sage. So everything is documented. You can go into that job and read. If it's a 2-year job, you can read month by month notes and action items within that job.
So what I meant to hear was, let's say there's this audio meeting going on. Is there some recording of this meeting, this web meeting that you have is happening, and then maybe an AI is kind of summarizing it or is that something like that you're doing? Or
No,
maybe
no,
not?
it's our project assistant is sitting in there taking notes, and we're still a little old school in that.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, totally makes sense. If a peer contractor asks you for a 90-day plan to tighten WIP discipline and speed up cash conversion, what would be your first 3 steps?
First, I would say you have to get buy-in from your operations management and the PMs that it's more than an accounting report. So
Hmm.
first, getting that buy-in is your first step. Second, then I would say it's education on whether it's the CFO, the controller, educating those users on what all that report does, and even a basic WIP of like, you give me these numbers, this is what drives this, to help them understand the importance of that. And then when it comes to cash conversion, I think one of the important things that we've put together is we have a report that goes out every single Monday to our project managers, and it comes right out of Sage. We've written it's called a My Assistant report, and it shows them the balance of AR on every one of their jobs.
Hmm.
So they quickly, every Monday, they have a ballpark. They know what they've billed. So if they see a job's got $1 million and they're only building 200 or 300,000 a month, they know that we haven't been paid in a few months on that job. So that's one of that cash conversion. And then we work together as a team, um, on asking, following up on payments and things like that. But the first three, for me, it'd be buy-in, education, and then finding a way to get reports to them that are useful to them and an easy to read, um,
Yeah, I thought the field teams, they have trouble with really long reports, and we
Mhm,
got 50 columns and like,
mhm.
100 rows. It's hard
Right.
to figure out what these reports are telling you.
Right, right. And we've even done that with our WIP. We don't break. We just have a column for labor dollars, a column for materials, a column for subs. We don't break it down into our plumbing side and our mechanical side. We can dig into that in our ERP if need be. And then a couple other columns we've added to our WIP, which I think are beneficial, is it shows the change in the margin from the prior month to this month, so that they can see that, wow, I've got some fade going month over month. And then in a column that shows the profit, fade, or gain since the job was set up. So they have a constant visual right there of what's going on with that job.
I like a useful way to do it. Next section is here, Jennifer, on job setup, governance, and billing discipline. Can you walk us through your no job opens until complete setup process? What documents and approvals are required? And how did you get operations and sales team to buy in?
So we have a really nice process now, and it's been a little painful. When I started, our president happens to own, as a mechanical contractor, just for you have to have a mechanical contractor of record license. You have to have a mechanical license and a plumbing and electric, all these licenses. Well, not pulling proper permits and doing things before you start doing work can put those licenses in jeopardy. And so when I started the company, what was happening is jobs were being set up without contracts, without pulling permits, without doing anything because the sales team was in charge of setting the jobs up, selling them and setting them up. And so we developed, first we moved that process under my area, and we came up with what we call basically a job setup form that the salespeople have to fill out that has multiple tabs, that they have to look through the contract. One, we don't set a job up unless we have a contract or a PO or a letter of intent that gives us the ability, but they have to fill out, what the billing deadlines are, who we're billing, where submittals have to be sent to, what are the insurance requirements, is there owner supplied equipment, is it tax exempt? They kind of have a form they have to fill out, which means they've got to do some research into their project. And then they have to have all the permits filled out and completed, and I review those. They have to have the estimate done. They have to have the schedule of values done, because we used to have where we just get the job set up, and then for months and months, our accounting department was trying to chase them to set up a schedule of values because we couldn't bill until that. And so we now have this um, faceted Excel spreadsheet and then even all of the quotes that we have from subcontractors and our vendors, they fill out a tab of the material POs that have to be cut. And I tie that to the estimate to make sure everything we have a quote for, one, that quote ties to what's in the estimate and also what ties to what's filled out. And then they do the same for subcontractors. And so when they say it's all together, it comes to my area, we review it. And the reason there's some of the stuff that's in there that as of known, I mean, I don't care about submittals. I'm not worried about where the insurance cert goes. However, we make sure that it comes in, and then my team verifies that everything is there. So one, we're not starting a job without permits, which doesn't put any of our licensing at risk. We aren't starting a job that we don't have a schedule of values, so we can start billing right away. We have all the material POs and subcontract POs so that the minute the job's set up, my purchasing agent can start cutting the POs and getting submittals. She's not trying to wait for the salesperson to get her copies of who they're buying what materials from. It's all spelled out. And the same on the subcontract side, the project assistant knows all of the subcontractors we plan to use, has their quote, and is able to issue them their subcontract agreements for the amount so that we have them signed and we have their insurance in hand, and we send with their subcontract our billing requirements. So they know the dates their bills are due to us, so we can include them in our bills. I mean, that's the whole reason we have the front end heavy job setup process is so the minute that job is open, every person from the PA to the purchasing agent to the project managers to the field foreman have everything they need, and we're not trying to chase it down later.
So does this kind of process slow down the execution of job, maybe schedule a little bit?
It can. And so, but in our business, construction's not fast for the most part. And we do a lot of, what's called plan spec bid work. So, well in advance, you've been awarded the contract, you were read low and so if the sales team is doing their work and getting that whole, everything set up as much as they can, because to no fault of our own, a lot of times the contracts, we're battling to get the contract. They want us on site working, and we're like, we don't even have a contract yet. And so, sometimes that contract comes and they want us on site the next day. Well, that sales team can get that whole file set up so that we can verify everything other than maybe what the bill dates are, what retention is, where we send paperwork, that final stuff that's in the contract. So a lot of times they'll have that all filled out. We'll do what I call kind of a pre-review so that the minute the contract comes in, we're ready to go. But it has held it up, but it's, for us, it's pretty easy to say to us, a general contractor, I can't go on site without a contract. You're asking me to go out and start doing work without a contract. So, and we do run into our sales team sometimes can put stuff off, and then they're like, well, I need this done. I got to be on site tomorrow. And I'm like, well, you were awarded this a month ago. And so that's, we sometimes have to play that hard love. What do they say? Piss poor planning is not my problem. Sorry, but that's, but we've gotten really a lot better, as a team. And it's really, we try to make sure everyone understands how that job setup impacts every person on the team. And so by not doing it, how you're actually making that person's job harder, or you're impacting your teammate because you didn't do your portion.
Yeah. How do you separate reporting and cash planning for construction projects versus service work? And what key metrics differ between the two lines of business?
So we have within our software system and our everything we do, we have people assigned. We have different departments, so they have their own P&L that we consolidate. We have an administrative department, which tends to be accounting, IT, HR, accounts pay. And then we have a service department and a construction department, and then we consolidate our financials at the end of the month. But service tends to be one I like to say, I came from a GC where we were a cost plus GC, so our only cash was when we got paid by the owner, we paid all the subs, and we hoped that cost plus covered our payroll, and then we had what cash left. So we spent a lot of time managing our cash flows and our forecasts and who do we pay and what do we do? It was a much different, I guess I feel I'm a little spoiled. Service is kind of I call it a cash cow for us. I mean, you're out, you do the work, you get billed, and most of our terms are net 30, you know what I mean? And so cash is coming in continually, which actually allows us on the construction side to, be out a little more on some payables with GCs, be able to, as a mechanical contractor, we have to buy a lot of equipment on the front end and don't get paid for it till it's installed. And so service really helps us manage that, helps with that cash side of it. But the biggest differentiators really are, the margins. The margins in service can tend to be our gross margin can tend to be over 40 to 50%. Construction, we hope to get 20 to 25%. So the margins just, even the bottom line net margins are significantly different because, service work, you can bill at a much higher bill rate because if someone's without heat or air conditioning, they're willing to pay a lot more than that, that new building going up that you're installing
Yeah,
their
yeah.
equipment before they occupy it. So, those are some of our big differentiators. But I have an AR person who manages all of our receivables, construction and service. And so she's following up. I mean, to us, I think the position pays for itself. I talked to some of my peers in CFMA, and their project managers are the ones following up and doing their collections. We run credit reports on anyone before we take them on as a customer because as everyone's experienced in our industry, we don't have enough workers. So we don't want to take on people that aren't going to pay us. And, when we have a large standing book of customers that we need to make sure we can service them, and we sure don't want to be off servicing other people that aren't going to pay us. So, my AR person is running all those credit checks, setting customers up, full-time collections, and it really allows our project managers to focus on what they should be focusing on. Even our service sales account managers, we may bring them in when we have one of their customers not paying us to maintain that relationship, but they also aren't having to spend their time trying to collect money from their customers all the time. We have a person doing that.
I come from a commodities trading background, and one thing that strikes me here different is maybe the risk profiles of service versus construction. They're different, and that's why you have more return there. So, could you talk about risk-adjusted return a little bit
Yeah.
here?
I mean, so the risk on a construction, I actually think the risk on construction's less because you have lien laws. You have the ability to lien their property and their title. And normally, when you go to bid for someone, you're bidding for a general contractor. For us, at least, we're bidding to a general contractor who's working for this owner. Well, if it's a public work, there's bonds involved, so there's someone guaranteeing that payment's coming in. And on private work, that general contractor is vetted out, that owner as well because they need to get paid. And like I said, and with lien laws, we have that protection of now are there chances you don't get paid? Absolutely. But they're less for service, you're doing, we're doing hundreds of invoices a week, and it can be a mom and pop dentist office to a small retail shop to a Coca-Cola, you'll play a very large manufacturing production facility. And so the risk on this service side actually is more because I don't have lien rights. My remedy is going to collections, which right away you're paying 35% off the top if you get any of that money back once you've sent it to collections or you get attorneys involved. So construction's risky on the work we do and the contracts and the pay down, but for us on the service side, we have more bad debt on our service side than we do on the construction side.
Yeah, so maybe that's why having more, margin on
Hmm.
service makes sense because there's just a little bit more risk
Yep.
there.
Yep.
So the next section here is on service operations and mobile execution. Which KPIs do you track to ensure work orders are closed quickly and billing happens on time?
So once we went mobile, which we did in 2016 on our service side of the business, where we were mobilely dispatching work orders to our service techs, and so they can see their dashboard, what work orders they have. Um, the first thing it did is it stopped having our office full of service technicians on Fridays filling out 3-part work orders, hand filling those out, as well as for customers, because now you're on site before you leave, you show them the work you did, they sign off, and a work order ticket is emailed to them right away, so that customer knows what was done. But some of the KPIs we look at is we look at open work orders. We look at the number of work orders that are what we call completed but not billed, which means they've been completed by the technician, but they haven't been billed. We actually create a WIP for each service technician, and our dispatcher works with them to be, so trying to ask, why is this work order 5 months old? Why is this work order 6 months old? Because it's really hard if you went out and fixed something for a customer and you don't bill them for 6 months to get it paid for, and that customer's frustrated. So we actually look at any work order that's over 60 days. Those get extra attention. So we use a handful of items that way to look at just maintaining, because we do, like I said, on average, we could do 1,000 work orders a week. And so having a way to track what ones are open is a big difference.
Thank you for sharing those KPIs. What measurable improvements have you seen since adopting Sage Field Operations for mobile work orders and PO creation?
A couple of things. One of the big ones is efficiencies. As I was mentioning, our service techs might work on, they could some days do 5, 6 work orders, service calls, and they used to have 3-part carbon copy, and they'd have to handwrite everything that they did, and they'd have to write the parts they pulled off their truck and the hours they spent on that, and remember what supply house they ran to, and they had to call into the office to cut a PO. Every PO they needed, they had to call the office to cut for those specific work orders. And so we lost a lot of efficiency in just filling out paperwork, as well as we had some technicians that would wait till Friday, and then they're trying to remember what they did Monday, what parts they used off their truck, exactly how many hours they were there. And then, we have a small office in Lansing, which is about an hour and a half from our Grand Rapids office. And so all those work orders would just get thrown in a bin in the office until someone drove them to Grand Rapids. So they could be done and they couldn't get billed till they came here and we into Grand Rapids, and our billing person had them in front of her to bill. And then she dealt with not being able to read handwriting. She spent a lot of time on the phone calling back to try to figure out what they had done, because she had to hand type those notes into the invoicing to send the
Mhm.
invoice. And then for POs, what we've been able to do, our service department has grown by 2/3 since, or almost doubled since I started 16 years ago. And we've added 2 office admin versus because now our technicians can all cut their own POs to the work orders they're working on. They're filling that paperwork out right on an iPad. They hit a button and it's to my
Mhm.
biller. So she has it in front of her and she's not reading handwriting. She's not waiting for him to come in. And another big thing we saw was what I would call our truck stock inventory losses decrease, because every year, you buy everything to truck stock, and then it gets relieved from inventory as our technicians put it on work orders and charge customers. And then at the end of the year, they count their trucks, and whatever's on their trucks versus what we have in our general ledger is a loss. And I th we have significant losses because I think there was a lot of stuff not being written on work orders simply because they didn't remember when they filled that work order out 5 days later, where now, before they leave the parking lot of the customer, they're supposed to complete the work order, pick all the parts, do everything. So we've seen a drop there for sure.
Yeah, I mean, the field people, their life tough. They're doing really difficult work.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, someone like you is making their lives easy with this tool. These tools is, you are very valuable to this industry.
Yeah, they're our technicians are wildly talented at fixing
Hmm.
stuff. They don't want to do
Hmm.
paperwork. And
Yeah.
so what can we do to help them out? They want to turn wrenches and fix stuff. So, it was honestly, it was what drove us to an ERP change. When I started with Pleune, we were on one ERP and they tried 3 times to get mobile. And after the third failure, that's when we said we've got to change ERPs because we identified that as one of the most critical things we needed to change in our business to pick up efficiencies.
What ERP are you using right now?
We use Sage 300.
So the mobile and Sage 300, they work well, right, for you?
Yeah, Sage has a Sage. It used to be SSO, Sage Service Ops. It's now Sage Field Ops.
Hmm.
But what I would say we do in the home office and the service management module translates to Sage, the field ops. And then what our technicians do comes back into the service management module for our payroll to get their hours, for my billing person to see the costs and the POs they put on the register, the notes that they put on. And so, yeah, it's been, as with any softwares, when you have integrations and they're talking back and forth, you get some bugs and hiccups, but overall, they've worked really, really well together.
How did you train or equip technicians to capture parts, time, and notes first time right in the field to avoid end of week memory gaps?
Actually rolled out the field operations in phases. So we rolled it out with some of our most technical as in IT technology based um, technicians first. And so they were kind of our guinea pigs where we worked through here's our process, here's how we think it would work, but we're not out in the field, give us feedback. And so we developed how we thought it would work, but then we had kind of that first group and then we worked through the bugs with them and then we started a second group. So we phased it in instead of going 100% all the time. And what that also helped with is then the technicians that were on it already, technicians were more comfortable to call other technicians and ask how to do things than they were to call back to the office. So it was very much a phased approach, but it's still learning. We've been on it since 16 and I still have technicians that forget to attach an invoice, a packing slip in service field operations. They take a picture and it's attached. And so because by chance they didn't cut a PO or they um, didn't get the receipt turned in for that they bought something on their credit card or their personal, my biller, because that work order comes in immediately, she looks at all the attachments, the pictures. And so if there's a receipt attached or a packing slip and she's like, wait, I don't see a PO or I don't see this on the register for a cost, it can trigger her to stop the billing. And so we still have technicians. In fact, this morning she had asked me, hey, I'm looking for this receipt. I can see you put costs on a work order, but it's not attached to an SFO. I don't know what he bought. So, it's always an ongoing constant education, but that's just part of anything we do.
Yeah. The next section here is on tech stack, change management, and CFMA lens. Where does your Sage 300 plus Timberscan plus Sage Field Operations stack perform well? And where do you still see opportunities to improve?
It works well in that, because we're a service and construction company, there's not a lot of ERPs that are really good at one and really good at another. You find ones that are really good in construction and they're weak in service or vice versa. And so, is Sage an older technology? Yes. Are they updating the data? I mean, would it be wonderful if it was a cloud-based, their new Intact? But the new Intact doesn't have all the things that we do in-house. We process payroll in-house. The Sage 300, Timberscan is its product. SFO is its product. And as you move to some of the more, I would say, cloud-based or updated ERPs out there, you have to purchase or you have to integrate all of those pieces and they're all from third parties. And I'm a firm believer, every integration you have with a third party is one more that you have opportunity for breaking. And so having everything we do within that one ERP controlled by they all are the same company, and the way they talk to one another. If something breaks, it's easier to get someone to figure out what broke because they're all operating on that same database and API. Now, the other side of it, like I said, the opportunities, it's an older technology. There's some really new and neat things out there, but there's also some partners that can help. I mean, we're partnering with Antera, which helps us do some dashboards, and we're getting close to starting some WIP forecasting out of it, and we can get some job position reports on our construction jobs on cash position much quicker, and in those, as we talked about earlier, those ways that other people want to look at them. Not lots of spreadsheets with tons of number. It's color-coded graphs, and then they can click down in information. And so finding some partners to help do that has really allowed us to make Sage still work for us without having to worry about changing ERPs at this minute.
Yeah. Reporting is very important for someone like you and maybe your executive team too. What lessons have you learned about leading technology or process change that sticks in a mid-sized contractor with both field and back office teams?
It's painful. I mean, even the software we bring in, it's hard to get people to adopt it. I mean, even now, we've been on Sage since 2016, and I'll have project managers or payroll come over to me and I can't get this information, and I go into the job cost module, the project manager payroll, and I'm like, you just play with some filters. I'm like, here it is. I think that no matter what technology, if the users don't want to play around and do some digging and searching, they'll say that every software doesn't work well. That's been a common theme for us. I mean, especially being a very technical-led company. I mean, we are 2/3 in the field, 1/3 in the office, and so these guys are technical, and they can fix stuff, and they can install stuff, and they're brilliant. But technology is not necessarily their biggest forte, and so getting them to want to dig into things and find it, they want it just kind of fed to them. And a lot of our office people, being a small company, being ESOP, I mean, our president, our VP of service, they were service technicians when they started for the company 30 years ago. And so now they're much more adaptive to trying the technology, but they still come from that mindset. So I think the biggest thing is if you can show them how it's actually going to make them more efficient once they learn it and it's easier for them, that's when you really get the adoption. So I think, it's not trying to do it too fast. It's got to be in slow little increments where you're teaching them how to use it and how it will help them.
Yeah. I mean, and picture where their life is like beautiful, everything's working perfect. If you can paint that picture,
Right.
they'll probably be willing to learn, right?
Correct.
So last question here, Jennifer, is from your perspective as CFMA National Chair, what are the top trends you see affecting construction finance right now? And what practical remedies do you recommend for CFOs and controllers?
I think right now the trends we've touched a little bit, it is technology and it is AI and it is finding that right balance of what you bring into your company. Just like we have a skilled shortage in the trades, the people graduating with accounting degrees is dropping. Now, the one thing that I think is really amazing and that CFMA is a huge help to is you don't have to have an accounting degree necessarily. I mean, every company is different, but most construction companies, I know a lot of people who are controllers and CFOs that started out as AP or bookkeepers, and through CFMA and through other things, they got the education and they got the understanding, and they're able to do the job as a controller or a CFO without that formal degree. But I think that for me, the trends, like what I look at in our company, is what are the technology things I can implement to help the staff I have now be more efficient, be more accurate, not to eliminate roles, but to allow them to do other things. AI is amazing, but so is what all of us have up here. And so using those tools to take some of that tasking away, to free our brains up and our time to do that analysis and the processing. And so I think that's a trend that, even in our company, but across CFMA, we're seeing. And even, you go to the conference, the technology vendors that are at our conferences, and they just keep coming up. And, I travel to a lot of our regional conferences, and I just was in Colorado last week, and I met another AI, and they were a sponsor at a CFMA regional conference. I'd never heard of them. and they were telling me what they were doing. I mean, they're just coming out of the woodwork. So I think all of us have to adapt and be open to figuring out how we want to phase it into our company and how we want to use it, because pretending we don't need it, you're going to really get behind the 8 ball. And then the other is start the succession planning. You know, we are, especially even at CFMA, well, a lot of what we're looking at is our demographics, our what makes up our population. Is that retirement cliff coming? Just like we hear, you know, the baby boomers retire. It's hitting CFMA as well, and it's hitting construction companies from their owners who are trying to figure out how are they transitioning out. And so I think really not being afraid to start thinking early on. I mean, I've been for over 2 years now. I had identified someone. I plan to semi-retire in a little over 2 years, but not fully retire for over 5. And I'm already mentoring someone in my company and starting to transition and hand things off in a very slow growth, because, you know, I see it coming. And so I think all of us, you know, and CFMA has to do it, controllers and CFOs in construction companies, and then even not being afraid to have that conversation with your owners. What's your succession plan? What do you plan to do when you're done? And what are you going to do with your company? So I think I think the technology, which is the kind of that front end and bleeding it, but then recognizing we're aging out and what are we going to do for that next generation to keep this industry going?
Yeah. Jennifer, thank you so much for your time. I had a great conversation with you.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Sure. Thanks for listening to Finance at the Job Site. If you found today's conversation valuable, share it with a teammate and subscribe so you don't miss the next episode. You can listen on Spotify or watch on YouTube. Just search Finance at the Job Site. Until next time, here's to building smarter, faster, and more profitable projects.